Hello, everybody. This is Harry Rawson from the Left Lane Zoomers. We had just finished watching the vice presidential debate. Here I have with me a regular Malcolm James. Alex could not be here tonight because schoolwork is a bitch, and and we do have a special guest. She is a friend of ours from high school. Her name is Jumana. She watched the debate with us, and she's gonna give her thoughts as well. All right, so first starting off with my thoughts. Um, I don't know. I guess compared to the last debate, it was kind of boring, and I don't know if anything will really come out of it. As far as like who I think who won, I mean, I think Kamala won pretty handily. I would say. I mean, just in my own biased mind, even though like I'm not a huge fan of Kamala at all, really, and you can watch numerous other videos of ours explaining why that is. But like especially like the one we made after she was announced to be the the running mate. But I do think she did a better job at answering the questions, even though like that isn't hard to do because Mike Pence didn't really answer any of the questions directly. A lot of times, like he would be asked a question, like they would just be going into a new segment. He would be asked a question and be like, I'll get to that question in a minute. But first, let me go back to what we were just talking about. He did
hmm
that throughout the night, and it was just like annoying and insufferable. It was just like, come on, man. And then, Joe Biden, come on, man. Uh, and, and yeah, that was just annoying. And I don't know. Other than that, I don't really have anything to add to that. I guess we're gonna have to wait until some time has passed by. We're gonna talk about it a little bit on Saturday when we do our regular episode. Um, but yeah, who's next?
Malcolm can go.
Sure. I mean, I really thought the debate compared to the last debate with the two presidential candidates, this was very cordial and more civilized. I, I did feel that they did get into more policy-oriented discussions and how, especially with Kamala, how she planned to do certain things with
Sorry, I'm just
some incorporation of the Green New Deal, uh, with tax cuts for the middle class and lower class. However, overall, of course, they're trying to abstain from the quote radical left label,
hmm
and I don't really find those policies of the radical left per se. But despite my disagreement with that, I did think she did very well, like in presenting her arguments about the Biden campaign's position on many of those issues. I mean, Mike Pence, I think he did. He was compared to Trump. He was more cordial, articulate, and he was able to use more so facts that favored his argument compared to Trump, where Trump was more so blatantly lying. But overall, if I were to say, I think Kamala did much better compared to Pence in terms of using correct facts and context.
right.
But overall, I say it was a very mature debate. Both got
hmm
to pretty much speak, and that's basically what I have to say for now until the second debate.
Yeah, I thought it was like a much better debate than the first one too. It was probably boring because they were actually doing the debate right and not interrupting each other every like 5 seconds. But I think that like on at Harry made a point um about Pence like changing the topic every once in a while to avoid the question. And I kind of just wanted to point out that Kamala did that too a little bit every like once in a while. So it wasn't just Pence. Although he did that like more often. Um, I don't know. Oh yeah, when they were talking about like the Supreme Court and stuff, I was kind of wondering if like they uh, I don't know. I kind of found it a little bit hypocritical on like both of their ends because like Pence was kind of hitting on like the fundamentals and the values of like the American family and the American people, but like it seemed like he forgot that the fundamentals of America depend on the fact that the Supreme Court is like supposed to be completely like separate from political parties and those kinds of biases. It's supposed to just interpret the law and the Constitution. um I don't know, I'm not really like too happy about the Supreme Court nomination being very kind of party oriented, because it's not what that's supposed to be like. But I don't know, that's kind of my opinion on it, I guess. But I thought both of them did very well. I thought Kamala did a little bit better though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, but the Supreme Court, being as partisan as it is now, I mean, that's kind of like how it's been for a while, kind of behind the scenes, more or less. But that
Yeah.
definitely all went out the window with Kavanaugh when Kavanaugh was out there openly saying, like, this is a concerted effort by the Clintons and George Soros and the Democrats. And he's like, yeah, the cat's out of the bag now. You're not going to be able to shove it back in
Hmm.
with where that's concerned.
Right.
But yeah, I definitely agree with you that Kamala definitely did that occasionally, where she would just like completely change the topic from the question at hand.
Hmm.
And I'll say this again, very much like it was with the last debate. It was basically saying who is further from the left than the other, rather than
Yeah.
really talking about like maybe like some of the merit of some of these left wing ideas, since many of these left wing ideas are very popular with the American people,
Hmm.
so called left wing ideas. Let me throw that in there, but and yeah, that was really frustrating. And
Hmm.
like who cares less about the environment? Like, they're like, I'm not gonna ban fracking. No, I'm not gonna ban fracking. Like, and I know we have our own thoughts about uh fracking. I mean, like, I think we kind of came to the decision that if we are gonna ban fracking, or to the conclusion, like, if we are gonna ban fracking, we should do it over a more gradual time, because fracking is important to many economies. We can't just take it away all of a sudden.
Yeah.
It has to be more of a transition period. But
Hmm.
yeah, my goal is to just completely end the use of fossil fuels. As far as like using only green energy, I would like that, but I saw a documentary about, like, I've seen numerous like studies and documentaries about like how that might not be as applicable. So like maybe like we can use like some form of nuclear energy.
Hmm.
And, like, this was like something that like Andrew Yang was talking about in one debate. Like, not, it was like it's like a form of nuclear energy where it's not as like unstable as like uranium. You can't make a weapon out of it. And I think that's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool prospect. I know that like I know like the Green Party says like no nuclear energy whatsoever. And I don't know how much I agree with that or not.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I thought it was kind of, like I mentioned this while we were watching the debate, but Pence kept saying like he kept trying to like get the term Green New Deal in every chance he could, to try and say like, hey, this is very liberal, like don't vote for this. Um but it kind of frustrated me, because it's like he never explains why it's bad. He never like talks about like, hey, the Green New Deal would result in, I don't know, something bad happening in the economy. That would have been like a good reasoning, because the economy does matter to a lot of people. But he never said that. He just kind of said, yeah, Kamala Harris co-sponsored the Green New Deal, so it's bad. And
yeah,
it just wasn't enough. Like, I'm old enough to vote, so to me it's like, why do you think it's bad? Like, I wanted to know that, so it's like maybe I should look into this more. Um but he just never mentioned that. So it was frustrating. And I thought
yeah,
it was kind of cheap of him to just try and involve parties in something that's like it's so involved in like into the environment and like people's lives like this. It's weird.
Yeah, like yeah, that's pretty much like all the reasoning that goes into like some of these arguments. Like it's
Mhm.
socialist. That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
don't like it.
I
Yeah,
mean,
don't
yeah,
like it,
like
or else
it's
you're a
not.
socialist too.
Yes, like it's not really fair to rule out every policy the left has as quote socialist because there's a lot of sensible policies that we have on the left. I mean, things like the green plan. It's a basically designed to help reduce carbon emission, which is affecting our environment. I mean, that should be something. While we may have different ways of interpreting how we can effectively combat climate change, we shouldn't be outright denying it or saying that you quote create job loss with it. Like that's absurd. That's simply not true.
Hmm. Yeah,
Like
and like
there are
oh,
many
sorry, go ahead.
ways we can like create more jobs and also keep the environment safe. Like the thing is, we can like the thing is, but Republicans don't really want to address that because they're in bed with the oil companies. Some Democrats as well.
Yeah, Joe Biden included. But yeah, like yeah, yeah. This whole like thing of like calling anything that they don't like socialism is pretty much apparent more now than ever because everyone who has a brain and pays attention knows that Joe Biden is not a radical leftist. He's not even like a mild progressive. He's a moderate Republican, and he would be in the Conservative Party
Yeah,
in Britain if he was over there. Like no one is less progressive on the Democratic Party than he is. Pretty much. I mean, he has some good things in his platform that I can get behind, but overall, like he's still pretty conservative even for an American Democrat.
Mhm.
And yeah,
Yeah.
so like and that's why like I kept on saying this during the primary, like people are not gonna really give a shit when you just say like, oh, if Bernie won the nomination, like if that happened, like if everyone people were like worrying like, well, if Bernie wins the nomination, everyone's just gonna call him socialist and people are gonna be turned off by that. It's like they call everyone a socialist.
Yeah.
Like I don't know why that's a huge concern. In
Mhm.
they
fact,
call everybody the left.
yeah, I'm pretty sure there are plenty of people like I saw on Twitter like after John McCain had spoken out against Donald Trump on some of the mildest of reasons. They called John McCain a socialist who's in bed with the Democrats, and anyone who knows about anything about John McCain's record knows that's not even remotely
Exactly.
true. And
He's
yeah,
just part of the George Bush era Republicans. That's it.
yeah, he's a Bush era
They're not
neocon.
the same as Donald Trump.
Yeah, yeah. So no one takes that. Oh, that's just socialism argument anymore, because
Right.
yeah, not only do they apply that term to like Joe Biden, even with like Bernie Sanders, I wouldn't even classify as a socialist, not even a democratic socialist. He calls himself that, but he is a in reality, or at least in the policies that he argues for, are very basic social democratic reforms, and and that's something I'm not saying like me as more or less kind of like a democratic socialist. I'm not saying I'm not in favor of those. Those are definitely great things to be in favor of that he argues for. But yeah, I wouldn't call like Medicare for all and free college, Green New Deal, ending the wars, those things. Those aren't socialists.
No, they're
The
not at all.
in many countries, that's just common sense.
But keep in mind that those countries, they they operate differently, and like I know that they that I know that sorry, I can't talk today. I know that their like policies in terms of healthcare, for instance, can be applied here, but there is like a limitation to that. It's not some sort of like, hey, let's give healthcare for all and that's it. Like no consideration for like expenses and things like that. France has to I know like France has like kind of like a universal healthcare system, but it's very different from what Americans make it out to seem. Like in America, people are like, oh my gosh, yeah, like everyone gets whatever healthcare they need and things like that. But in to French people, it's kind of different from what I've heard, at least. Um, and it's not just like this perfect, like land where you can get like any sort of treatment you need. It's very limited in some areas. So like I'm not saying that like universal healthcare is bad, but I'm just saying like there are kind of cutbacks to having universal healthcare and having like socialist programs in place. Um and it generally does depend on like the demographics of the people involved. Like it just a lot goes into it is what I'm saying,
Yeah.
basically. And
Yeah.
I don't think it's fair to completely dismiss people that have concerns about it, for instance, or to dismiss people that
I mean,
are socialists. So I don't know.
Well, yeah,
It's kind
nothing is ever
I
that
mean,
simple.
yeah, I
But
mean,
Mhm.
yeah, when I think of a perfect healthcare system, I don't think like France.
Mhm.
What I think is more
It was just an
like
example of
the
it.
UK. The UK consistently ranks as having, ranks like as like the top healthcare system in the whole world, and they don't just have a single payer system like what is proposing. They have a fully nationalized healthcare system, not just nationalized insurance, but nationalized healthcare altogether.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's like, and you know, people in the UK love their healthcare so much they have parades for the National Health Service. And but yeah, like I can definitely see your point. Like nothing is ever
I
that
mean, yeah,
simple.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess it's kind of arguable that Britain also doesn't need to spend that much on defense and that much on
We don't need to
certain
spend that much on
agreements.
defense. We
I
just choose
mean,
to.
as a country that has been involved like very recently in a lot of conflicts and stuff, it can be argued that we need a lot of defense. I'm personally very against the fact that the DoD has a majority of the government's budget, which is very unfair to a lot of other people. I think it should be redirected towards like education, but that's just my stance.
I
But
would
I
say
was just
we
like
don't need
pointing
to be
out
in
that
those.
like
Yeah.
Britain has aspects that the US lacks, and the US has aspects that Britain lacks that may limit the US from implementing the same system that Britain has.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I would
Although
argue that we
like
don't need to be in these foreign interventions in general.
what?
I would say we don't need to
yeah,
be in these
definitely.
foreign
I think we should
interventions in
mind
general.
our own business. I
So
mean,
if
yeah,
a humanitarian crisis happens abroad, should we just keep it to ourselves?
No, that's different. I'm talking about like if there's a humanitarian crisis, we should go in and try to help out, but we should do that as a nation among nations, not a nation above nations. We should not position ourselves as the world's police. But when it comes to like conflicts like Afghanistan and Iraq,
Mhm.
for example,
Mhm.
like that is totally different. I mean, like there Iraq was based on a complete lie. I think we can all more or less
Yeah,
agree on that.
yeah,
So we don't that was pointless. No need to we need to get out of there right now.
I do agree with
It
that, but like I don't know, like what draws the line between like a humanitarian crisis and what isn't a humanitarian crisis? Because you could have something that could result in a humanitarian crisis that needs action right now, but like you don't know that for a fact, but you also like don't know for a fact that later on it's not going to become a crisis. It's I don't know, it's kind of complicated. Like no one
yeah, it
would
is
ever
complicated.
a lot of people didn't know that like the Yemen crisis was going to happen until like the UN released reports about it to the US and Britain and France urging them to stop like funding Saudi Arabia, like but we didn't know that was going to happen until way later, and now millions of people in Yemen are going to die by the end of the year from malnutrition. So it's like I I don't know, like we could have prevented this with military action, with diplomacy,
I
and that all requires DoD funding. So
a lot of
I don't know.
a lot of Saudi Arabia's
I mean, I
resources do
get
come
that and
from
all,
us.
but
So
like,
we could have like if Trump could have
Mhm.
signed that bill that was written by Bernie Sanders and Mike Lee to end our complicity in this genocide, and then like cut business ties from Saudi Arabia, and that could have done a whole lot
He talked
to.
about that. well, actually, he didn't talk about that. He talked about relations with Saudi Arabia way before he was running for president. He was like, "Oh, it's a good thing that we're trading weapons for money because that's how the economy works." Woohoo! And that was kind of shitty of him, but I think that's kind of his general mindset right now. He doesn't really care about people in Yemen as much as we
Yeah.
care. So
I mean,
I don't know,
yeah,
it very much sucks.
Yeah.
I think
And
one person should be in charge of the entire military and have them do anything at his bidding. But
yeah, and the inconvenient truth about our business dealings with Saudi Arabia is that we give them arms and resources, and then Saudi Arabian government gives those resources to numerous different jihadist groups. So, they keep on saying like
they also do
Iran,
intelligence.
yeah,
Yeah,
like and like we keep on saying like Iran is the biggest state sponsor of terrorism. No, in a way, like in in more or less indirect way, we are. So and
it's
that's what
not
I
even
was.
that indirect.
Yeah.
It's very direct.
Well, like like if we just the conversation isolated to we give arms to Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia gives arms to jihadist groups, but like there's so much more than just that. So yeah,
Yeah,
in
I
that
mean,
in that way we are indirectly, like in that way alone, we are indirectly the biggest state sponsor of terrorism.
yeah, but in a different way, it's like we are directly responsible for terrorism because, um, you probably did you ever take like History of the Modern World? Because like there was this one unit
No,
with Mr. G
I
that
should
like
have.
we talked about the Iranian coup launched by the CIA for like a while, and they basically, like, the US government, without telling anybody, basically like overthrew the elected Iranian president because they didn't like that he was nationalistic and wanted the oil for himself. Um, so they
Yeah,
overthrew him, and then they put a guy in charge, but then the people didn't like that guy, and so he got overthrown. And now, like, they have a religious leader, um, and like, and the weapons that they gave to the people that were rebelling are now like what like were well, they became weapons that um are that were used by terrorists and things like that. So it's like we kind of gave them the power and we gave them the weapons that necessary. We gave them literally everything they needed to like harbor terrorism. But then when they did harbor terrorism, we kind of just blamed that on like their culture and how backwards they are instead of
yeah.
the fact that we intervened. So
We were friends with Saddam Hussein for a long time until leading up to the Gulf War.
yeah.
And then like everyone was like telling like George H.W. Bush like, oh, you should have gone all the way and gotten Saddam, you need to chase that bastard all the way to Baghdad. And so yeah, that's
Mm.
definitely right. uh so we kind of went
Mm.
on a little bit of a tangent beyond the
Yeah.
debate, but
We did.
I did like the little conversation we've had about the numerous things that they talked about. But yeah, that'll be it. We'll be sure to do a in-depth coverage of the debate, but since there is not really too much to
There is a
this
message just, yeah.
specific to the debate, we are going to have time to talk about more things rather last week we only really talked about the debate. But have a good
Mhm.
night, everybody.